Hello everyone, I'm Silent Death, and welcome back to my Let's Play Space Engineers series. I said we were going to go back to the survival world this episode. Unfortunately, after the latest patch, when I log into the survival world, things just start randomly exploding. So we will not be going there today. Instead, I have something that is somewhat of an extension of the previous episode. Some super turrets. I have been pondering a problem. The problem I'm having in my survival world is attacking heavily armored and turreted ships and getting through their defenses. Missile turrets are pretty easily intercepted by Gatling turrets. And while you can use the fixed rocket launchers to break through a number of defenses, it is incredibly expensive. Rockets are just horribly expensive in realistic survival mode settings. Really horribly expensive. To the point that if someone was attacking your base and you were trying to defend it with missile turrets, and they had enough Gatling turrets to make it take or reduce your hit percentages to just 25%, they could just pretty much lose a ship over and over again, and eventually you would run out of enough resources to defeat them, even if you win every single fight. Which brings a little bit of a interesting challenge, is how to break through some heavy armor defenses as cheaply as possible. And my first design here, which we're going to discuss today, I'm going to break this up into several episodes. I have a few different things I want to try. But this is a super turret. We can hop right in. And if we go look at our target over there, we are. We have 14 small Gatling guns, all focused on this single little turret, and that is all it takes to render it inactive. So a pretty effective defense, and if we keep going, it just burns right through the heavy armor itself. Against small ships, it is even more devastating. It blows right through that. And that's heavy armor there. And I think it's 4 layers of heavy armor to go all the way through that. Let's take a quick look at this. It does have a few weaknesses. Well, a number of weaknesses. But we'll look at the design. So the innards are basically this. They're just guns on rotors that are on rotors. So there's a row of rotors right there connected to these other rotors. So these angle these guns towards the center here. And these angle them towards the center here. And these work the same way, so they all converge at a single point. And using the same timer setup that I used last episode, you can have 4 different presets for your range to make them more effective, certainly effective against large armor blocks. We also have a double set of hinges here. So a hinge there for that direction, and then another set here. And then I've added a bunch of armor on this to make it much less vulnerable than the Gatling turrets over there. It takes a whole lot more damage to destroy this than it does to destroy one of the normal turrets. And it also produces a whole lot more firepower. This is just so that you get the crosshair if you need it. It's a little bit off center due to its not being placed in the center. But if you need a crosshair, there's that for that. I've also added some thrusters in case you have a little bit of trouble moving in that one direction, which happened briefly after the patch and then it fixed itself. I don't know if that's a bug or something. But we have some more rotors, an antenna for the remote connection, as it is vulnerable to down the throat shots. We have 8 rocket launchers so that they don't get a shot at your camera, as that would really screw it up. And they don't get a shot down at the hinge stuff down below. Originally, I planned on using the kind of connector that I used on my assembler, automated assembling machine. The scissor arm assembler, that is what I'm trying to say. The connector with the landing gear. Unfortunately, they seem to have changed the size or something of the landing gear, maybe the collision box. They don't properly fit over the large connectors anymore. That is some of the explosions I was having in my survival world. There's also the problem with the lack of ammo due to this not being connected to any form of conveyor system due to the angles. And these guns especially don't have very much ammo. If you put more cargo containers here, they start just freaking out and wobbling all over the place, which I imagine would be even worse in multiplayer. And then you have the conundrum choosing between armor and maneuverability, or well, firing arc I guess would be the appropriate term. The closer in you have this to the machine, or the turret, the less vulnerable it is, but the more restricted its movement. The wider open you have this little bit, the more you can turn it around in the wider firing arc. But then you run the risk of something coming in the side and shooting it up right in here, where it's all quite vulnerable. You can, of course, extend this little armored part just straight down. That would also decrease your range, or decrease your firing arc. It is an option. It is, of course, designed to be remote controlled. So if you have multiple players on your ship, multiple friendly players, hopefully, you can have one piloting the ship and the other one using this mostly as a preempt to boarding a ship, but you can also use it for getting rid of pesky little small ships, as it can just melt right through all those. And that is something that turrets have a bit of a time with, especially if you're just focusing on Gatling turrets without having your ship damaged, as it's pretty easy for a small ship to kind of sneak in there, especially if they're using drones, so they don't have to worry about that extra size. And of course we have some power and gyroscopes just all over the place. Some down below, down there, and the remote control thing is in the center of all the rockets down on the bottom there. Cannot see it. It is underneath the camera. That's another reason to protect the center. But that's pretty much all I have about that. There's a couple of other things that I want to talk about. There is a contest. Actually, there's multiple contests, but The one I'm most interested in is designing a mission for space engineers to be scripted. I think I'm going to try to do that. Both the scripting part are doing a little bit of scripting, because I mentioned last episode that I wanted to look to do that, and I have been doing so. Unfortunately, they had broken some of their scripts, and it made it a little bit more difficult than I had originally planned, which is partially or part of the reason that this episode was longer delayed than I thought it would be. But they've since corrected some of their stuff, and there's been a lot of helpful posts on the forums themselves from other players. So I've been learning how the script works. It's not particularly powerful right now, but you can do some quite interesting things with making cargo ships more aggressive. I had originally planned to make an auto aiming thing for this. I believe there is a way to make an auto convergent script for the guns on this, and also an auto aiming thing so that it can follow a specific target. I have not tried that out. I did not get a chance to work on it for this episode due to having a bug with this world. Apparently, logging out while you are remote controlling something is not a good idea. But I managed to overcome that eventually, after a few days. Though we still don't have the script. However, as I'm probably going to be working on a mission at least right up until the deadline, which is November 30th. There will not be an episode until after that is finished, as I simply am not going to have time to do both. Mostly because I cannot play Space Engineers while I am rendering videos, or obviously editing them either. Though once I finish the mission, assuming that I'm able to do what I want to do, I will probably post kind of a making of videos about the individual components that make up the mission. I'm planning on somewhat basing it on the scenario, the starting scenario that I have mentioned repeatedly. Though it's going to be a little bit more elaborate than that, depending on what I can get the scripts to do. Another announcement, but less favorable, and something that has a lot of people rather angry, is that Space Engineers has released a retail version. I can see why people are angry about this, because the game is not in fact complete. And if you look at the covers that are going to be on the boxes, the box art, there's no mention that this is not a complete game on the cover. That is going to make a lot of people very unhappy when they buy a game and find out that this game is not yet finished. There's kind of a unwritten rule that when you put a game in a store, it's a finished game. It's fine to have, beta games on Steam and stuff, or like Minecraft did. But when you put something in the store, it should be, finished. To add more insult to the injury, the people who buy the retail version get extra stuff, including special DLC. That's right, the game is not yet finished, but there's already DLC. Because it's not bad enough to have Day Zero DLC, we now have DLC before the game is even released, or even reaches a gold version. Which of course makes people even more angry, because this is only for people who buy the game now, and not for people who've been supporting the game for the past couple of years. Also, the people who buy the retail version get the previous 2 King games included. Yeah. I honestly have no idea what they were thinking with this. I cannot quite fathom what they could possibly have done to piss off more people. Perhaps if they make the included DLC replace the game sounds with racial slurs and homophobic slurs, that might succeed at pissing off more people, but it'd be a close run thing. Really, this is just, I have no idea what they are thinking. I have no idea how someone could look at that and see and think that would be a good idea. It does kind of worry me about them opening themselves up to false advertisement lawsuits, especially in the US. But I am just shocked. So yes, I would not recommend anyone buying the retail version. I would stick to the early access Steam version and wait and see what the backlash is from this public relations nightmare that they have unleashed on themselves. Again, there will not be another episode until after November 30th, though hopefully around that time, or when I finish the mission, there should be a pretty awesome episode for the mission itself. I'm planning on using some of the techniques I learned when I developed the intro for CGI explosions and stuff, and sticking those in the actual video part of the mission. Hopefully I can get something that's quite nice, though I'm still pretty much a noob at that kind of thing. Anyway, I can stop rambling now. Like if you like, subscribe if you're not, leave a comment if you have anything to say. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time!